Aristocrats. This is a base black deck. I believe like about a third plus, maybe like 40% of the deck is black, with the remainder of the colors pretty much evenly paired at about like 10 to 15%. Between all of them, maybe some of them fluctuating as high as 18%. I think white's the second most populous color, or I'm sorry, green is the second most populous color. So I mean, I guess you call it a base rock deck, but really it's just base black. So decks like this can tend to be kind of daunting because the mana base is extensive. I think even this mana base requires probably a little bit of revision. One, you want to be quick. That's why we're playing Moxen as our points. You also want to have fixing as highly as possible in a deck like this. So what is 4-color Aristocrats trying to do? Well, it's trying to take basically a collection of garbage bin cards and turn them into a game win. It's really a density-based combo deck that has ounce to play as an aggressive to aggressive mid-range deck in the early to mid-game, and eventually set up a combination with cards like Goblin Bombardment or Blasting Station, Goblin Sharpshooter, combined with cards like Hissing Iguanodon, Judith, the Scourge Diva, Mayhem Devil, Cruel Celebrant, Zulaport Cutthroat, or Blood Artist, to essentially just machine gun your opponent out with some sort of way of sacrificing creatures. Which, we have all the best free ways of doing that. Viscera Seer, Yawgmoth, Thran Physician, Falcon Wrath Aristocrat, Butcher of the Horde, Yahenni, Undying Partisan, Cartel Aristocrat, Bombardment, Goblin Bombardment, Carrion Feeder, Cabal Therapy, and then Cabal Therapist, which I'm trying out in the deck right now. So how does the deck do that and maintain any semblance of card advantage? Well, it uses a lot of dumpster rares and dumpster commons that you wouldn't often think would see play in Canadian Highlander. This one's not. Voice of Resurgence is not. But Safehold Elite is definitely a dumpster common. Nest Invader may see niche play in other decks in the format, but probably not. Mog War Marshal, nope, doesn't really see play anymore. Sultai Emissary, Doom Dissenter. It's just funny to go through these cards. Throw Carrier. Basically, all of these cards that they have in common is they either come back on their own or they make more things when they die, which means they're very tough to remove. Tide Taker actually does see play in Death and Taxes. A good card. Martyr of Dusk. Nope. Not anywhere other than here. Young Wolf. Tukatun Thallid. Blisterpod, Grim Initiate. Blisterpod was actually in, I believe, I don't know if it was a Pro Tour winning, but it was definitely a Pro Tour competing deck that involved Crippled Rights. It may have won. I can't recall now. Grim Initiate, a new card. Bloodsoaked Champion. This guy, may not be the best. I'm playing him because he's black over a card like Brindle Show. You'll see in my sideboard / maybe board here I have Brindle Show. Brindle Show's possibly a better card for the deck, but Bloodsoaked Champion does just come back. You can sack him. He's a 2/1. He's 1 mana. He's in my base color, so I think he's a little bit better than Brindle Show. Dreadhorde Invasion may be the better card, though, for the deck. Hunted Witness, yep, just comes back. Doom Traveler, yep. Ophiomancer just makes more silly things. Catacomb Sifter, yep, makes more silly things. Allows you to also scry, and generates mana, but colorless mana doesn't tend to be that relevant in the deck. So this is kind of like how this deck functions. You have your engine cards that are your win cons over here, your engine cards right here, and a Skull Clamp, I suppose. These are also engines, but these are not sacrifice engines right here. These are kind of just card engines, is what I'll call them. They allow you to basically draw cards whenever you do sacrifice to keep the engine running. Plus a bunch of guys right here, that just make more guys or gals. You also have Mana Acceleration, which, as I said, you want to be pretty quick and you want to have good color fixing. We're running Mox Diamond in this list, even though it's 32 lands, because color fixing is far more important than mana capacity. Our curve tops off at 4. We're playing 5 Mana Dorks. Deathrite Shaman can do a little bit more than the rest. And then also a Chrome Mox, because individual cards may not be relevant in your opening hands. This is a deck that runs a pretty wide array of different types of cards to accomplish an engine. And if you have redundancy in, engine pieces, like let's say, I have an Imperial Recruiter and a Recruiter of the Guard, but I don't need both. I can put one under the Chrome Mox and I'm just fine. Or if I have like Cartel Aristocrat and Yahenni Undying Partisan, I probably don't need both. I can put one of them underneath the Chrome Mox. Same with these right here, the actual win cons. You only generally need one win con. The more of them you have, the easier, because you'll do more damage per actual aristocrat cycle. But you don't need them. The last pile over here is kind of my board control. You have Plaguecrafter, which you'll see me misplay with this card. I did not know it killed Planeswalkers, which is pretty amazing. I haven't played with the card that much. I thought it just did creatures or hand. Kolaghan's Command. This is kind of an interesting choice for this deck. The reason I ended up adding this card is because it just does so much, and it actually works decently well with my game plan. Because most of my game plan circulates around creature-based permanents, the ability to get one of them back to accomplish, let's say, a win con or an engine piece, a sack engine piece, is pretty powerful. Typically speaking, you're not getting back your things that make more things with it. Renegade Rallier. This card just gets back anything that you may need. Again, it's kind of like Kolaghan's Command. It's a creature that, because most of my stuff, with the exception of, I believe 4 cards in the deck, cost 3 or less, you can just get any one of them back. And it's mostly a permanent-based combination. Actually, it is a permanent-based combination. So this card tends to be good in this deck as well. Peerless Mirror. It's just, it's a good early kind of controlling card. This deck will tend to control against, red deck wins, Sui Black, White Weenie. Those kind of decks, typically speaking, you'll control in the beginning. And this generally represents a 2-for-1 against small creature-based aggressive flood strategies, like horizontal grow strategies. Just pretty good there. Alright, Tide Hollow Sculler. This card with a sack outlet's actually kind of a cool combo, so is Mezfiend. Both these cards don't operate like the newer cards that have been templated, i.e. like Brain Maggot. So basically, if you play this card, the ETB goes on this stack, targeting your opponent, and if you sacrifice it in response to the ETB, whatever was underneath it goes back to your opponent, which is nothing at that point, and then you just exile the card permanently from their hand, which is actually something that comes up in the games that I will be showcasing. Same thing with Mesmeric Fiend, just a smaller body. Collective Brutality. I'm just playing this because I wanted more hand attack. I wanted the ability to kill a Scavenging Ooze without counters on it, and I wanted the ability to just get any problematic instants or sorceries out of my opponent's hands. And it's not the worst to have to discard in this deck, because like I said, some of the card quality is kind of all over the place. It's a little bit more of a it's a density-based combo deck, so you have cards that are going to be the most relevant thing you can be doing, and then you're going to have cards that just aren't really what you need at that point in time. So I think you have the room to play it, and Collective Brutality is just a strong discard spell that's easy to cast and has a lot of flexibility, so I kind of like having it. You'll notice I'm not playing Duress and Inquisition. They're currently on my sideboard. One of the bad matchups for this deck is going to in general be combo. I've kind of given that matchup up as a buy. I think this deck can be combo, but I don't think it's going to tend to. I don't think that's its milieu. Realistically, what this deck's good at is beating the good stuff decks of the format. I think this deck is good against aggressive decks because all of its creatures generally just trade with them and then make more of themselves. So Blister Pod trades with the Goblin Guy, or not Goblin Guy, but with a Jackal Pup, and then just makes another 1/1. Or a Fire Drink Satyr if you want to be more current. And then it's going to be against the good stuff decks like Jeskai, Abzan. I think it's fine against those decks because they're just playing all good cards, but their removal doesn't tend to 1-for-1. It generally, 0.5s for 1 against a lot of the different stuff in my deck. You'll kind of see that in some of the matchups. That all said, I am running Thoughtseize. I am not running Inquisition and Duress. I kind of gave up the combo matchup as a buy, but I did want to have kind of the best discard spell just as a catch-all to be able to get things out of my opponent's hand. This could be a mistake. I could just not want Thoughtseize and want just another random creature, go up to 52. Same thing with Swords to Plowshares. If someone's playing a big fuck-off Anafenza, the 3-mana Anafenza, which just hoses the graveyard, or Scavenging Ooze, or Deathrite Shaman, then I want to have the ability to kind of deal with those cards. Having one just kind of catch-all, hey, nope. I kind of like having access to, but it could be wrong. It's kind of just added flexibility. These two, are in flex spots right now, and it could be we can make this deck more singularly strong without running them. So, that is the deck. The way it runs is, and then we also have tutors. So, sorry, we have my last point, which is Stoneforge Mystic, really only in here to find Skull Clamp and then just get sacked to something. Mausoleum Secrets, this is a really cool card, if the card reader will pull it up. This is Undergrowth. Search your library for a black card with converted mana cost less than or equal to the number of creature cards in your graveyard. Reveal it, put it in your hand, and then shuffle your library. So basically, it's Demonic Tutor in this deck. Well, it's not. I mean, we can't find any of the non-black cards, but we do have basically black sack outlets. We have, which is our cards from this pile right here. We have black win conditions, which are in this pile right here, and then we have black interaction and black card engines. So, realistically, you can find whatever you need to find with it. You're generally not going to be using these type of cards for like carrier thralls and like bitter blossoms. You're going to be using it to find one half of your engine, so you can turn these crappy creatures into a win. Diabolic Intent, also quite good when you have creatures like Tukathung Thallid, sacking it to find whatever you want in your deck and getting back a 1/1 is just great. And then Recruiter the Guard and Imperial Recruiter, both in the deck, because they find 90% of the deck and allow you to just set up a win. They can either find something from the sack outlet or the win con, right here. Garruk Relentless, this is the only planeswalker, correction, he's one of two planeswalkers being played in the deck. He won his removal, which is kind of nice in this deck, and after he removes something, he tends to turn into a tutor. So he allows you to find, generally speaking, like sack outlet or damage engine. Quite a strong card. I don't think he gets in every deck, but he's definitely really strong in this deck. Liliana Heretical Healer, 2/3 lifelink, decent body for the size. Oftentimes it'll flip over, either force discards or return relevant combination pieces from your graveyard to play, while also leaving behind a 2/2 body that you can sack. So just kind of a cool card. As far as the engine cards go, we have Skull Clamp, which is actually unpointed, but very, very powerful in this deck. It allows you to kind of draw out. You can generally overdraw the blue decks with it. Midnight Reaper, this says whenever a non-token creature dies, you draw a card and lose a life. The card is just very powerful. And yes, we are making a bunch of tokens with this deck, but we also have to sack them the first time around, and if you can draw 2 to 3 cards off this, you're generally in a winning spot. Grim Haraspix, this does not care about, this does care about non-token creature. Whenever it dies, you draw a card, so it's a slightly worse version, or slightly better version of Midnight Reaper, because you don't take the life loss off of it, but still, I think Midnight Reaper is still very powerful. Then Smothering A-Bomb, this is probably my worst draw engine. Like, the card is kind of cool because it's a big flyer, but it has 3 toughness, which means it gets bolted by anything. At the beginning of your upkeep, sack a creature. Whenever you sack a creature, draw a card. We have a lot of sack outlets. Oftentimes you want to play this when you're going to be able to get advantage from it right away, but I've definitely played it out and just had it get bolted because I didn't have a sack outlet in play, but I still had to pressure my opponent. And it does that just fine. 4 mana for a 4/3 flyer is not horrible, and the ceiling on it is quite high. The floor is pretty medium, but the ceiling's quite high on the card. So that is the deck, guys. I'm gonna take you through a couple games. Let me do this first. Let me talk through kind of like some of my maybe board considerations. Dreadhorde Invasion. I'm probably gonna put this in the deck. I think it's probably better than the Bloodsoak Champion. The Bloodsoak Champion just presents more pressure right away, which I kind of like about it. But this kind of represents more long-term pressure. Rally the Ancestors. This card is sweet. I kind of want to try this out. I don't know how relevant it is. You really want to have this. So here's my thing, right? Like, this card is really only great in like the grindy matchups where like you eventually just draw into this thing and have like 40 things in the yard and just reanimate them all and kill them on the spot. But this deck already is pretty good against the grindy decks, so I don't know if it really needs this. It doesn't really make it any better against combo. It's not really a great card in like that sort of matchup. It helps you kind of like double up your combo, but like generally speaking, like if you're playing against like a combo deck itself, like a committed density-based combo deck, you're just gonna be beating them down as fast as you can, and you're gonna like do one Aristocrats loop to do like 5 to 6 damage to them and just win the game. I don't think Rally's gonna really come into play, so I don't think it makes the deck better at what it's not good at. I think it just makes it better at what it is good at, if that makes sense. And it's kind of even a corner case. Demonic Consultation, I think, is a card that's worth consideration in this deck. Yes, it is an engine-style deck, but it has a lot of repetitiveness in the engines that it has, and if you just need one of these pieces, to go off, I think it's probably worth it. Brindle Show, yeah, I talked about this card a bit. Currently, running Bloodsoak Champion. Yeah, Bloodsoak Champion over this card. That could be wrong. I could want Brindle Show as well. It does make a 3/3. Good card. Tainted Pact. Yeah, kind of same argument to Demonic Consultation. Like, it may just be worth it in this deck because I'm not running... Well, right now I am not running any basics, so I think if you were to play this in a larger event, like this is really just kind of a draft build of this deck. I would consider probably putting in one Swamp, just so you have outs to like getting Assassin's Trophied or Path to Exile and getting a land out of it. Which would be kind of nice. Probably should be. There should be a Swamp in the list somewhere. But Tainted Pact, just very powerful. It is kind of slower, and I do have 2 tutors already in the deck. You don't want to have the list chock full of tutors. I have 2 specific, like just all they do is tutor. They don't put a body down. So I don't know. I don't know if it needs it. Fireblade Artist, this is a card I'm interested in testing it with. I don't know how sold I am on it. It's a good aggressive creature, but it's kind of slow. It's not a sack outlet. Well, it is a sacrifice outlet, but it's not a sacrifice outlet you can just use at any time. So I don't know how sold I am on it. Sin Collector, this would probably be a decent add to the deck. It would kind of help the combination matchups. You have this thing plus Cabal Therapist plus Cabal Therapy plus Thoughtseize plus Mesmeric Fiend plus Tide Hollow Sculler and Sin Collector. Just kind of ups your game a little bit against that matchup and Collective Brutality. Yeah. Duress, Inquisition. Yeah, I don't know. Just talking through it, there is a lot of discard in the deck, so maybe you don't need them. I'm putting them in the board for now because I don't think you do. And then Orzhov Pontiff. This is an interesting card that I think I would like to test out. If I had a lot of Craterhoof in my metagame, I think this is a card that would really help you just kind of ranch Craterhoof. It also can just be used to make your own shitty creatures really big for one turn, just to attack them and then sack them all out and do 5 damage on top of the 10 that you do with the attack step. So I think Orzhov Pontiff is definitely worth a nod. A couple other interesting intercard synergies in the mana base. This is one of the decks that I found has the most on-color Canopy lands. What's cool about that is the Canopy lands actually have some cool interdeck combos. Mayhem Devil actually works with any sacrifice. Sacrifice is a permanent, so all of your fetch lands turn into basically not forked bolts, but flame jabs. And these do as well. So if you sacrifice these, the Mayhem Devil also does damage off of these being sacrificed, which is pretty cool. Yeah. So anyways, guys, I'm going to go on a quick pause. I'm going to jump into some gameplay with 4-color Aristocrats. I hope this has been at least somewhat informative. This is an earlier build of this deck. It's not an archetype that I have historically put a lot of faith in, and I still don't think... I think it's a meta deck at the end of the day. It's a very fun deck. It does a lot of cool things, and one of the interesting things I've found playing the list is that, regardless, when you play an opponent with this list, they tend to enjoy playing against it because it's just interesting and cool and, kind of unique and just exciting. Because it just has a lot going on with it, and there's a lot of play to the deck. The deck has a lot of decisions that are involved in it, and hopefully in the games that you get to see with me playing it, I do it justice in playing it as well as I can. Quick pause, guys. We'll be back momentarily for some gameplay with 4-color Aristocrats. Alright, guys, we're back. I'm going to leave the card window up for the gameplay here, just because some of these cards are going to be a little bit more interesting. For instance, Blister Pod. Devoid 1/1 for a green. When it dies, create a 1/1 colorless Eldrazi Scion token that has sacrifice this creature, add a widget. The rest of them are probably cards that if you play, if you're enfranchised in Canadian Highlander, you've probably seen before. Butcher the Horde, just a sack outlet, just a big dude. Get a Deathrite Shaman out, turn 1. I play out the box. I think that hand attack is more likely than artifact destruction on turn 1. That could be wrong. I'm going to go for the Gusto here. Notice I don't fetch. I don't want him to know I have another fetch land. They unfortunately have Force of Will. And I lose my Butcher, which is kind of, disheartening because, you want to play Butcher, but it's a 2-for-1. They exiled Nopt. They burn off an Arc Trail. I go ahead and play out a Martyr of Dusk and a Blister Pod. So I'm playing against Jeskai, which is great for me because I'm I know this is not a great matchup. Now they're playing Terramorphic Expanse, which is not a land you commonly see in this format. They may want more shuffle effects in their deck. I don't know. Or they may just not have all the fetch lands they need. Play out a Sulphur Falls. After Sleight of Handing, I play out a Canopy land, sack it, find another land. I'm saving my fetch land. So this is Fire Ice comes in. And this is kind of one of the interesting things about this deck, right? So we're on a creature deck, and we're on a small creature deck, and we're playing against Jeskai, which traditionally is a bad matchup. We've been Arc Trailed, Fire Iced, and Force of Will. Now Force of Will is a 2-for-1, but Arc Trail and Fire Ice tend to be 2-for-1s in their direction. And we're at equivalent cards. We have equal number of mana sources in play, and I still have 3 power on the board, which is kind of why the Aristocrats deck in general, I think, tends to do very well against Jeskai. Jeskai's cards are all really good, but they do not template well against cards that come back after being killed, or make more things after they die. They cast on a Chandra, exile a Bolt, do 2 damage to my face, play out an Evolving Wilds, which, again, I think if they're playing... Terramorphic Expanse, Evolving Wilds, I suppose, makes sense. I go and attack their Chandra down to 2 here. Play out the Mez Fiend. They sack the Evolving Wilds in response, finding an island. I look at their hand, see that there is an island. I'm not in a great spot, but I'm not in a horrible spot either. I still have the Swords of Plowshares for like any Brimaz they draw. They exile a card, end up playing out a Moat. Moat is a very powerful card, but I can get around Moat because I can use my cards to actually, or I can sacrifice my cards to do damage or life loss. I draw into a Grim Haruspex, which is not like a phenomenal draw, but it's acceptable. Now it's going to be very gross with the Skull Clamp. So I Skull Clamp the Mez Fiend, which has nothing underneath it, draw 3 cards off of it, sack the Hunted Witness, drawing 3 cards, sack one of the Scion tokens, drawing only 2 cards because it's a it's token creature, and I just start drawing. So why do I draw like a Madman here? Well, what I'm trying to do is this. I'm trying to find a damage engine, which I've found here. So Mayhem Devil is a way that when I sacrifice, I can actually do damage to my opponent. And what I realistically want to do is actually not even damage them right now. I want to kill this Chandra, because the Chandra, 1, will kill me, and 2, it's a card engine. And they're obviously, they were before at least, on no resources in hand. So I'd like to just build up resources against them and kind of try to take away their resources. Basically take away their means to win the game. And then win the game. So kind of basically grind them out. So what I did here is this. I found a couple things that are actually relevant. The Mana Dorks are irrelevant. The Carrier Throw and Young Wolf are fine. But what's actually relevant in this hand right now is the Viscera Seer, which is a tax-free sacrifice outlet, and a card that does damage off of sacrificing. That's kind of what the goal was, of like just going to town with the clamp there. Opponent plays out Pestermite, which is a means to kill me, so I'm going to have to deal with that. Monastery Mentor is irrelevant because they have a Moat in play and it cannot attack, nor can the tokens it makes. So I play out both of my cards, both of my engine cards, my Sacrifice Outlet, Bottom Caves of Koilos, and my Mayhem Devil, and start knocking down the Chandra. Sharpshooter I leave on top because that is a card that I would actually like to draw. I don't need another pinger right now, but what I do want is redundancy. So if they kill the Mayhem Devil, I actually don't just I'm not just stuck. So that's why I keep the Judith and the Goblin Sharpshooter. See a Bloodsoaked Champ, get rid of it. Sacrifice another non-token creature. Draw to a Nest Invader, meh. Find a Carrion Feeder, which I'm actually very happy to find Carrion Feeder, because Carrion Feeder is a redundant Viscera Seer, which means that I'm going to have another, in hand, I will have another Sacrifice Outlet that does not cost mana, and I will have 3 win conditions. I have Blasting Station, Goblin Sharpshooter, and Judith the Scourge Diva. And I still have plenty of random creatures that just make more creatures when they die. They cast Treachery, try and take my Sacrifice Outlet. I sack it to itself in response to the target. Cast out my other Sacrifice Outlet here. Play out a Cruel Celebrant. Play out, I believe, a Nest Invader here. I don't need multiple. I could use multiple of these Aristocrat damage dealers, my win conditions, but I don't have the mana to do it, and I would like to have access to Skull Clamping if I need to. I just start sacking stuff and doing damage to them to see if I can find another 1 mana creature to actually win the game. I just put the clamp back on the Carrion Feeder. I can grow up beyond bolt range now if I need to, having to sacrifice one of my two damage dealers. Play on a Carrier Thrall, and they're just very dead. I'm gonna at this point play out Judith the Scourge Diva. Sacrifice the Thrall Carrier, do 3 damage to them. Sacrifice the token from the Thrall Carrier, do 3 damage to them, and then sacrifice one of the damage outlets and do 3 damage to them. So that is game. So basically, we got moted out. We're on a creature deck. We got moted out and basically just used the engine to kill them. So looking at both these decks, Jeskai in general, and we're playing against more of a Jeskai control version, and it looks like my opponent may be on a budget, so it's probably not the most top-tuned list of it, but I'll jump into another game versus Jeskai where they are on a more tuned-up list. Regardless of that, they're playing cards that are in the tuned-up list. So Arc Trail, Fire Ice, Forked Bolt, I wouldn't be shocked if it was in the deck. Ancestral Recall. Force of Will, they have a lot of ways to acquire 2-for-1 advantage against decks. Treachery, so a lot of their cards are designed to have board impact at the exchange of 2-for-1, think Grim Lavamancer type cards. Aristocrats kind of turns that on its head, because killing its creatures does not per se kill its creatures. So you spend a card to kill like half of a card. And even when they're like cards like Archtrail where they kill two things, like if they both come back as, an undying creature that becomes a 2/2 or a thing that makes a 1/1 flying lifelink or whatever, that's not really a great exchange on cards. So I think what you kind of get to see here is that, this deck, despite having what are apparently suboptimal threats compared to like, an independently good card like Hexdrinker or Tarmogoyf, are actually beneficial in this matchup because it eats up more of their cards. So in a way, this matchup is not really about out-aggressing the Jeskai deck. If anything, like the best way they can win is by aggressing you. It's about outcarding them. It's basically about using your engine to outcard them and having so many redundancies in your engine that it's very difficult for them to disrupt without having knowledge of your hand, which on a blue-white-red deck, they're not going to, because I guess Gitaxian Probe is a card, but other than that, they're really not going to have that knowledge. I guess Gitaxian Probe, Vendilion Click. But outside of those, like, they're not really going to have a ton of good hidden information about your hand. So it's a very tough deck to play against with Jeskai, and I think in general, like, the best way for Jeskai to win the matchup is just to pressure them out of the game and hold their removal for things like Mayhem Devil and Carrion Feeder, because they are sack outlets and damage outlets, and if they're on the board, it's very difficult to win. Anyways, guys, quick pause. We'll be back for game number 2. Alrighty, guys, we're back. This hand's acceptable. It's nothing spicy, but it's fine. It's got a Mez Fiend. It's got a Blood Artist. It's okay. Alright, it got a lot better with the Garruk. Again, a Mox start, but I'm running 5 Mox into my deck. So their hand's interesting. Their hand has 2 islands, a Signet, a Braid, a Moat, and a Monastery Mentor. So it has no white mana, and its only means of fixing red was this Boros Signet. I just take the Boros Signet, so if they do draw into red, they can abrade my thing. They don't abrade my thing instantly, which is interesting. I would have just probably abraded it instantly, so I don't protect it somehow, but I don't have a way of protecting my creatures. They abrade it now, get back their Signet, draw into a plane, so their draw's been pretty good. It's allowed them to kind of get their cards on the board, despite having a little bit more of a greedy hand. I go ahead and play Garruk, kill the Monastery Mentor right away, because that card can actually kill me. It's a very fast clock. I play on a Butcher Ghoul. They play on a Moat, so the Moat is now online. Play on a Blasting Station, sack the Wolf, do 1 damage to their face, make another Wolf, untap the Blasting Station, and say go. So if you're unfamiliar with Blasting Station, it's kind of a weird card. It says, sacrifice a creature, Blasting Station deals 1 damage to any target. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield, you may untap Blasting Station. So Blasting Station's kind of cool. This hand's a little bit awkward, though. So I can't cast the Cartel Aristocrat or the Cruel Celebrant because I only have 1 black and 1 white source, and they're both stapled to the same card, Caves of Koilos. So right now I'm just satisfied to sit back and kind of dome them for some damage, play on a Martyr of the Dusk, and just keep going to town with Blasting Station until they're dead. They do have the Moat again, so I can't attack them, which is unfortunate, and they just, I guess, drew a counterspell or something, and they just can't win. I don't know. They could not win here, evidently. The Blasting Station and Garruk, the Veil Cursed, were just enough to batter them into submission. So, pretty cool matchups against SBM 77 here. I think this is kind of like an interesting matchup because it kind of showcases like how a meta deck like Aristocrats can really kind of corner Jeskai mid-range, which I think, in my opinion, is one of the best decks in the format. It just has game against a lot of different decks, but I don't think its game really extends into this matchup. Despite the obvious risks that you incur playing 4-color Aristocrats, which is that you have like a much worse matchups against a bunch of things that Jeskai just trounces. But at the end of the day, like, that's kind of one of the cool things about the format is, like, despite there being, like, in my opinion, a couple of best decks, like some very, very top tier decks, which I think Jeskai is among, there are decks that just utterly ranch them, and I think this is definitely one of those matchups where, like, Jeskai just does not have much of a hope against Kratz because their cards just do not template well against what the deck that I am running for C Kratz is actually up to. Quick pause, guys. We'll be back momentarily for the next game in the matches. Alrighty, guys, we are back. So this hand was acceptable. So I'm not gonna lie to you. Unfortunately, when I was playing this game, I just accidentally clicked Mulligan. I did not mean to, and then I keep this hand. This hand's trash. This hand's risky. So I see Cliffdrop Retreat, and I'm thinking Jeskai or Boros or like maybe Wildfire, but probably Jeskai. Play out Birds of Paradise here. It's probably gonna get bolted, is my guess. They play on a tapped land, do not bolt it. So we are against Jeskai. Play on a fetch land here because I'm a luck sack and hit my land. play on a Doom Traveler, say go. They Serum Visions into Mountain, into go. Well, they don't have Counterspell mana, so I am just going to slam a Yawgmoth, Thran Physician. The Good Doctor hits the board. They cycle a Miscalc, which is just like oofa doofa. Like, you definitely want to Miscalc the Yawgmoth if you can, but obviously their mana just didn't work out well this game. Play on an Impulse, probably looking for removal for Yawgmoth. Play on a tapped land, cast Path of Exile on Yawgmoth. I sack the Doom Traveler, not opting to put a counter on anything. Draw a land, sack the Spirit, draw a card, and allow Yawgmoth to get exiled. Unfortunately, I don't have any basic lands in my deck. Go ahead and play out a Smothering A-Bomb here. Play out the Nurturing Peat land and play out the Cabal Therapist. I'm saving my fetch lands for the Mayhem Devil. They burn off the Smothering A-Bomb, Snapcaster for Chain Lightning, get rid of the other sack outlet, and they're down to one card. So I'm feeling pretty good here. I play out the fetch land, blow up the Snapcaster Mage, find a land, play out Martyr of Dusk, and attack for 1. I'm feeling pretty good about this. Yeah, I'm down to one card in hand, but I mean, they're pretty much hellbent too. So I make a misplay here. This is where I was saying I haven't played with Plaguecrafter that much. I cast Plaguecrafter out. I did not know this said creature or planeswalker. So I wouldn't have attacked the Gideon of the Trials. I think that was a poor play on my part. I should have just attacked their face. This obviously doesn't do any damage. The Mayhem Devil just triggers and does nothing. But I feel kind of like a dolt. I missed out on 3 damage in their face. They cast out a Manus Rider, holding what is likely to be like a land or a counterspell. Nope, it's a Soulfire Grandmaster. Soulfire Grandmaster. So I sack my fetch land, do 1 damage to the Soulfire Grandmaster, find some other random land, Plateau in this case, sack the Nurturing Peat land to draw, find a Skull Clamp. So this is a bluff attack. Like, I can't actually punish them if they block the Martyr of Dusk here, but they don't opt to block it. It's a pretty safe bet that I have some way to kill the Martyr or the Manus Rider. I mean, I have an on-board way if I can sacrifice. But they don't block it, so I get that 2 damage back from the 3 that I lost earlier. Sack, do 1 to their face, down to 12, fetching for, again, another random land, in this case Scrubland. Play out the Bloodsoaked Champion, leave up access to my Deathrite Shaman as opposed to clamping again. They fire up the Celestial Colonnade, and it looks like they're going to attack with both. I do the math. I've done the math earlier in the game. I know that I have lethal on the backswing here, so I just go ahead and exile one of their spells, down to 8. Equip up the Plaguecrafter, attack with all, putting them down to, I believe, 1? 2 exactly. Find a sack outlet plus the Hissing Iguanosaur, so I have the win regardless of using the Deathrite Shaman here, but I just Deathrite Shaman them for 2 more damage. This wouldn't have been as tight if I had gotten that 3 damage in as opposed to punting and attacking the Gideon when I had a Plaguecrafter in hand. But such is life, reading the card explains the card, and Plaguecrafter does say Planeswalker, which is not something that I knew was on the card. It definitely puts it up in my estimate. I did not think this card was that playable until I saw it just eat that Planeswalker right off the board. Anyways, guys, quick pause. We'll be back momentarily for game number 2 against Jeskai Midrange. Alrighty, guys, we're back. Hand's great. It's not great, but it's fine. It's got a sack outlet. It's got one Aristocrat. It's got some mana acceleration, and it's got a Horizon land, which I'm actually going to keep here. I just play out my Horizon Canopy, my Mox, both my Moxen, my Butcher Ghoul, and my Avacyn's Pilgrim. So if they like Forked Boulder Arc Trail me, whatever. They basically get like 1.5 cards for 1 card. I'm trying to set up to get Yahenni down. So I play out the Savannah here, play out the Yahenni, look to attack here. I want to leave up the ability to sacrifice the Horizon Canopy because I do want to get kind of an engine going on. Right now I don't really have an engine. So I just sack the Canopy Horizon right now. End up sacking the Avacyn's Pilgrim because I don't think mana is going to be a constraint right now. And they're just furiously throwing burn spells at my Yahenni. And I'm furiously sacking a board full of creatures that are not really that great. So I play out the... I do a tech play here. I play out the Tidehollow Sculler, sack the Tidehollow Sculler, giving Yahenni indestructible, so that whatever card I take out of their hand is going to be exiled permanently. This is going to give me a little more information on what to do, and it's also going to still allow me to play out a Birds of Paradise to leave up another creature, 2 creatures on my opponent's turn to protect Yahenni. They kind of have like a do-nothing hand. They need a creature really badly. So they had Jet, which I took Jet. They have Daze, Lightning Strike, and Sword of Fire and Ice. So I'm feeling pretty good about this. Like, they don't really have a creature. They're going to cast out a or lightning strike here. I just sack off the ghoul to give my Henny indestructible. Draw to Cabal Therapy, play Cabal Therapy, naming days, eat the days, play out the Iguanosaur, recast Cabal Therapy, naming Sword of Fire and Ice, doing 1 damage off hissing Iguanosaur from sacking my Birds of Paradise, getting rid of the sword, and attacking them for 2 down to 10. Opponent evidently drew lands. They're going to take 10 this turn. Or, I'm sorry, 5 this turn. Draw to a Theomancer. I double check mana. They do not have Cryptic Command mana, so it's fine to cast my spell main 1. I cast it main 1 just in case this happens, so they can't just block my Yahenni and kind of get me. They don't block Yahenni, they block the Iguanosaur. They take 1 damage off their creature dying from hissing Iguanosaur, which does not trigger in response to itself. And Yahenni gets a +1/+1 counter from their creature, the Vendilion Click dying. And they get to have an Ancestral Vision this turn. However, at this point, I have 2 other creatures with Yahenni to protect him from anything that's not a Swords to Plowshares or a Path to Exile. They look at their top 2 cards and they say, damn, my deck's not very good against yours, and they pack it in. Alright, guys, so actually, I just got a call. I got to run. I had a couple more games I kind of wanted to showcase with this, but I'm going to cut it here. This is 4-color Aristocrats. Sorry for kind of like the isolated matchups against Jeskai, but I do think it's kind of like one of the more interesting matchups in Canadian Highlander because Jeskai in general has this great game against everything. Not so much against this deck, so you kind of got to see Jeskai control like a big moat control deck. And then Jeskai mid-range kind of just, smash against the rock that is 4-color Aristocrats. I think this build is pretty decent. I think there is room to grow in it. I think the deck is very fun. Would I take it to an open meta and expect to win tournaments? Probably not, but it's very, very fun to play. And it's a very cool deck that I think is at least Tier 2 or Tier 3. You play it well, it can do pretty well. But there's, generally speaking, better density-based combination decks out there. But the upside to it is it can also just play like a random fair mid-range game where it beats down with slightly suboptimal creatures. And sometimes that's good enough. Having that flexibility in your cards can be good. Anyways, guys, I'm going to go ahead and pack it in there. I hope you guys enjoyed the deck tech and theory of play for 4-color Aristocrats and getting to see some of the gameplay that I have with the deck. Take care and enjoy.